Hello everyone, today we're going to be learning about the different types of basic bodies and how to use them when drafting patterns. So for every pattern drafting, we need to have a starting line. So here I went ahead to mark my start line. And now from the start line, I'll go ahead and mark out the various points in my bodice. Now this is a front bodice. So for a front bodice, we just need our chest point, bust point, under bust point, and the waist point. So I went ahead to mark these points down, and after that, I went ahead to connect them with a straight ruler. Now after that, it is time for us to draw our neckline. For the neckline, I came in by 3 inches for the width and 2.5 inches for the breadth. Now some people use 3 by 3 inches depending on their neck measurements. So if you want to get your accurate neck measurement, I have a video on that, you can check that out. So next thing I went ahead to do was to come on the start line and mark half of my shoulder measurements. I marked that same thing on the chest line and connected the both points together. Now this line will guide us to draw our armhole line. Now for the armhole on the chest line, you would come in by quarter of your bust measurement and mark that down. On this straight line, you will find the midpoint and come out by half an inch, and then you connect the 3 points together to form your armhole curve. After drawing the armhole curve, the next thing we are going to do is to draw our shoulder slope. So our shoulders normally is not straight. There is no part of our body that is actually straight. So we have to make that place a little bit slanty. So for the shoulder slope, I came down from the shoulder line by half an inch and connected it to the neckline. And that is it. After that, I went ahead to mark out all my body measurements on the paper just to draw out the bodies. So I measured quarter of my bust measurement, marked it on the bust line, marked the same thing on the chest line, and on the waistline I marked quarter of my waist measurement and connected it to the line on the bust line. After that, I just traced it all out, and it's time for us to cut out our bodies. So this is our front basic bodies. Now these basic bodies can be used for a plain top, a plain t-shirt, stretchy dresses that doesn't need that, or any free dress or tops that doesn't need a dart. Now for a basic bodies with a bust dart, after drafting your plain basic bodies, on the bust line, you will just come in by half of your bust span measurement or your nipple to nipple measurement. From that line, you will come down by the difference between your front and back waist line. So the difference between my front waist and back waist is 1.5 inches. So that is what I marked and connected to my bust span line. So you can go ahead and close it by either sewing it down or using a tape to close it up. Now for a basic bodice with a waist dart, you will start from your start line and mark your chest point, your bust point, under bust point, and waist point. So for every front bodice, we need a chest point, a bust point, an under bust point, and a waist point. As long as it is for the front, we need these 4 lines. So after marking these lines, the next thing I went ahead to do was to draft out my neckline. On the neck, I came in by 2.3 inches and I came down by 2.5, and I marked them together. After marking it, I went ahead to mark half of my shoulder measurements. The same half of shoulder measurements I marked on my chest line, and then I connected these 2 points together. This will guide me to draw the armhole line. So on the chest line, I went ahead to mark quarter of my bust measurements. On that straight line, I found the midpoint and came in by half an inch to draw. I joined the 3 points together to draw my armhole curve. After that, on the shoulder line, I came down by half an inch and connected it to the neckline to form a shoulder slope. So the next thing we're going to do now is to draft our waist dart. So for the waist dart, I just marked the midpoint between the bust and under bust, and then on that midpoint, I came in by half of my bust span measurement and marked that down. So on the waistline as well, I came in by the same half of my bust span measurement, and after marking it down, I went ahead to mark half an inch on both sides of the point. So for those half an inch that I marked on both sides, I will connect it straight up to the bust span measurement I marked above. Now after connecting it, this is our waist dart. Now the next thing we're going to do is to mark out our measurements. So we would measure quarter of our bust measurements, mark that down. The same measurements we would mark it on the chest line, and on the waistline we'll mark quarter of our waist measurements. But because of the dart we took, our waist is going to be shortened by 1 inches. So we'll add that 1 inch back, and then we'll connect all these points together. So after connecting it, this is it for a basic bodice with a waist dart. Now these bodies can be used for t-shirts that need a dart at the waist, or any plain dress that just need tightening at the waist point. Now for a basic bodice with both a waist dart and a bust dart, on the bust line, just come down by the difference between your front and back waist, and again on the bust line you come in by half of your bust span measurement and connect it together. Now one tip to use while drafting a bust dart is try as much as possible to not make your line straight. Now this line is straight because this is just a sample, a basic sample. So while drafting, make it a bit curved to give it proper fitting. This particular bodice can also be used in place of a basic princess dart. Now for the back basic bodice, from the start line, we'll just mark out our chest line, our bust line and our waistline. Now for the back basic bodice, these 3 lines are just what we need: the chest line, the bust line and the waistline. And it is also necessary to note that the back waistline is usually shorter than that of the front. Now after that, we'll draft our neckline. As usual, we'll come in from the width by 3 inches, while for the depth of the back is usually higher than that of the front. So for here, I came down by 1 inch. After that, I went ahead to mark half of my shoulder measurement on the start line and on the chest line, and I connected it together. Then I found the midpoint of the line that I connected, and after that I went ahead to mark half of my bust measurements and I connected it together. Now for the back armhole, we don't come in by half inch on the midpoint because the back is a bit broader, so we don't need to reduce the size of the armhole. After that, I went ahead to slant my shoulder by coming down by half an inch and connecting it to the chest line. And after that, it's time for us to mark out our measurements. So on the bust line, I marked quarter of my bust measurements. I marked that down, and the same measurement for the bust I marked on the chest line. On the waistline, I marked quarter of my waist measurement and marked that down. After that, I went ahead to connect the lines together. So this is it for a basic back bodice. Now I went ahead to cut it out. Now because the back bodice does not require much, this particular pattern can be used for literally anything, be it a plain t-shirt or a bustier dress or a fitted dress. But then some people like to tighten the waist of their back still. So this leads us to, so for a back bodice with a waist dart, on the waistline, you will come in by half of your bust span measurement. And on the chest line as well, you will come in by half of your bust span measurement. And then you connect these 2 points together. After connecting the point, it's time to draft our dart. So how do I get my dart for basic bodies? For basic bodies, I just divide my bust span measurement by 4. That's half of my bust span measurement. So if half of your bust span measurement is 4 inches, divided by 4 is 1 inch. So that 1 inch, you will share it on both sides of your dart by half inch to form 1 inch. So after we take our dart, you realize that your waist measurement has reduced by 1 inch. So to replace that 1 inch on the side of the waist, just come out by 1 inch as well and connect it to the bust line. Now this is it for our basic bodice tutorial. Now all these patterns that we have learned today, you can actually alter it to draft your bustier patterns and even your corset pattern. This is just the basics. So if you have learned something today, please give my video a thumbs up and please subscribe to encourage me to bring more of these videos to you all. And I'll see you all in my next one. Thank you and bye.